it's hard to not be spoiled in this this first world kind of world that we live in, where everything is, our biggest problem is we have too much food
Oh,
and
right.
too much
Yes.
stuff
Too much food
and too
and
much entertainment and
to
too
the
much.
point where other people have too much and then they task you with stupid jobs. So you have too much work because some other guy has too much money and now everybody's got too much time to work on this silly project. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
This cycle of decadence.
it's how you can see how a stay-at-home mom that like her kids get to where they're late in high school and she doesn't have many errands to run for them and they take care of their own rooms and everything, how they get into these weird clubs that you go like, why is that so important to you? Like the HOA where they do the
Yeah.
landscaping at the front of the neighborhood and you're going, who has time to worry about that? People with
Well,
too much
there's
time.
people.
Or
And
yeah,
big picture, that's a good problem to have.
yes,
Because
yeah,
you want to be, you'd rather be there than in the gulags, you know?
totally. Yeah, that's a point that Peterson makes is these are, first world problems are exactly that. Like when you're in the gulags, you're not all that concerned about, you're not all that concerned about how your pants fit.
I did that. Did I ever show you that short documentary I did on the Polish monks that moved to Broken Arrow?
No, you told me about it, but I didn't see it.
I'll have to
Yeah.
send it to you. But I listened to hours of interviews somebody did in the early 90s with them of these. Welcome to the Conspiracy Dad podcast. We'll just kick it in here with a little
Yeah.
history lesson. Um, they were Polish monks who were in Dachau and Auschwitz. And then after the war, they came to this part of Oklahoma because the military infantry that got them out of the gulag or out of the concentration camps, they were from here. So
Mhm.
they didn't know where to go because the communists were taking over Poland and they had to leave. So they said, well, let's go serve the people that got us out of the camps. That'd be nice.
Mhm.
And they did a lot of good when they came here, but they were a pretty good, from the history that I researched, they were holy men, but also a lot of the stories that I heard were like war messes people up. And
Okay.
it's like they
Yeah.
were odd. That's a way to put it. I mean, they were also culturally, they were Polacks,
Yeah.
they came here. They
Well,
didn't understand American culture. One story was one of the priests, they were receiving reparations money from the German government because of the medical experiments and the war crimes that were committed against them.
so
So
to be clear, are these Jewish
no,
Polish
Catholic.
people? Okay, because I mean, most people when they think of refugees, Auschwitz,
Yeah,
that sort of
yeah.
thing.
That's another interesting thing that I learned through the process is that uh, probably because Poland was mostly Catholic, Jews were a pretty small minority in the
Mhm.
country. Actually, a lot of those concentration camps were mostly not Jewish. It's
Are
a really
you
weird thing.
denying the
Like,
Holocaust?
I'm not denying it.
No,
I'm
I'm
saying
joking.
like there was like, probably 50% Jewish, 50%
Okay.
Catholic and other political. A lot of them were Catholic, but probably more not necessarily in prison because they were Catholic, but in prison because maybe Catholic, but also other
Okay.
political, like the World War One, reasons or whatever. I
Okay.
don't know exactly the reasons why, but there was a significant amount of the population that they weren't Jewish; they were Catholic, and so yeah, they were put in there. And I've heard people argue reasons why, but I mean, I listened to interviews with the guys,
Hmm.
and the truth is, um, they don't know why. So like several of those priests, they asked them like, well, why were you arrested? Why did they put you in Dachau to begin with? And say, I don't know. An SS officer pulled me over. He didn't like the look on my face or
Hmm.
something. And he said, off you're going. And, that's kind of I mean, that might be a difficult part about history is that I don't know if we'll ever have an answer. There was times where they would be arrested for, or not arrested, but punished for things like they found a cabbage on the side of the road and they picked it up and ate it. And they're
Hmm.
like, well, that was state property. So you stole
Yeah.
from the state. You're
Yeah.
going to prison now. And yeah, it's complicated history. But I think, I forget what my original point was,
Yeah.
except that
Sorry,
they
I
were,
didn't mean to derail you. It's just I think most of us think of exclusively Jewish people in
Yeah,
concentration
no,
camps.
it's, I mean, obviously the Nazis had a thing for the Jews, but uh, the they executed like they executed and imprisoned almost all of the clergy in
Hmm.
Poland,
Hmm.
which is almost completely a Catholic, country. So it's a lot of people.
Okay.
They you know, and it could be for religious reasons. It also could just be political reasons to think, yeah, we just don't trust those Polish people
Hmm.
for whatever reason.
Yeah, I was thinking about yeah,
Oh, the story I forgot. So the
yeah,
story of the priest
right.
was
They came to Broken Arrow
he came
because
here. He's getting all this reparations money from Germany. He does not understand American culture at all. So like back in Poland, there's a culture of, maybe less capitalism and more just honest. He didn't see the snake oil
oh,
salesman coming. So there was some
yeah,
sort of some guy in Tulsa selling like oil rights and promising like a certain amount of return on your
sure.
investment that was
Yeah.
like ridiculous.
He's like the guy on the pre-roll that you probably saw for this video, that he's got his phone up and he's like, I'm going to show you how to make 6 figures a
Yes,
month
exactly.
without doing anything at all.
Yeah, it was exactly that.
Yeah.
It was like, give me all your money. I'll give you 15% return every year. And he's like,
That sounds
give him
great.
all of it.
Oh,
So
yeah.
he did. He
You
did.
mean-
And then he lost all the money. And it was like, and all the parishioners were like, why did you think? And he was like,
but
he said on TV that it
yeah,
was 15% return. It was on TV. And they're like, all the Americans are like, you
it's,
don't just believe him.
well, but you do if you are. I'm trying to take up for the Polish specifically because I know
They're
there's this
just so dumb. No, I'm
well,
just kidding.
there's this stereotype that I enjoy making those jokes too. But after studying history, I just started thinking about like, oh man, it's probably the Nazis that started that whole bit about dumb Polish people, right? I mean, like that's
Well,
where
because
that
they were
came
acting
from.
dumb. No, I'm just kidding.
But
You
but
could
the
just
other
keep
day you were
going with
talking
it.
about projecting and how like dictators don't trust other people because they are not trustworthy.
Yeah,
And here you've
absolutely.
got this sweet Polish fella who it never occurred to him that somebody might take all of his money and not show him anything for it, because that's never something he would do to
Well,
somebody
yeah,
else.
and
So
or him or anyone in Poland. Like I think
yeah,
culturally, it'd be they just didn't have a lot of
right.
that.
You
It's
just,
pretty
yeah, your
strange.
word is your bond, that sort of
Yeah.
thing. And I realize I'm being kind of a square, not a fun dad right now, because it is fun to make fun of the Poles for being dumb. But it's just lately I've had a soft spot in my heart for them.
I love the Polish. I don't. I mean, especially after researching that documentary and uh, people. I should eventually. I want to try to edit and release the full interviews because it's very telling when you hear people argue about history. You hear Holocaust deniers. You hear, even people swinging the other way, where like you said, like you assumed that Dachau was only full of Jews. And
Hmm.
it's like,
Yeah.
no, like half the population were gypsies and Catholics and just other political dissidents and people
Hmm.
that didn't, the Germans didn't like for whatever reason. Their story kind of gets lost, and like it's a lot of people.
Yeah, there's that Ordinary Men book that Peterson talks about. Um, and I wonder, like, when you talk about some of these Polish guys going, I don't even know why I got put in that camp. Yeah, he just didn't like the look I gave him, whatever. And I wonder how much of that was miserable German soldiers that were just becoming resentful to everybody that wasn't a German
Well,
soldier.
what I think it was, and I'm not an expert for sure, but the people charged with running the camps
Mm-hmm.
were prisoners themselves.
Hmm.
So they needed all of their, elite soldiers on the front lines.
Okay.
So the people put in charge of the camps were probably people who were criminals themselves that they
Huh.
got out of prison and said, all right, you're out of prison, but you're going to run the camp. So a lot of bad people were put in charge of the concentration camps.
Well,
They
that's
didn't send their finest to the concentration
okay.
camps. They
Yeah.
sent the guys that were, probably, not qualified to do anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not surprising that, yeah, that you'd have a bunch of psychos,
Morally ambiguous.
torturing and being just
Golly.
horrific towards these people because it doesn't make sense. Why would you send your your best talent to the work camps,
Sure. Right. Yeah. You want
These
them.
guys are just slave
Yeah.
labor. They're making odds and ends for the state, but
Well,
they're
they're
not.
making them do work for just for the sake of making them do work a lot of the time.
One of the stories, there was a woman, uh, she was a part of the church, but she was just friends with the priest, and that's why she came here. She was from Poland originally, but she somehow befriended one of the priests in New York because he had a radio show, and then ended up coming to Broken Arrow. But her story is unbelievable because she was actually an American. So her parents, this is the bad luck of Polish people at this time. So her parents left Poland, came to America, have her decide to go back to Poland for whatever reason, and then they're invaded. So she's an American citizen in Poland as a child, and the Nazis invade, and she ends up getting sent off to the gulags through the Russians or whatever. And it's an insane story. Like I've read like her whole. She didn't write a book, but she wrote like kind of a bio about what happened. And I mean, she's 15 and she's sent off to this Siberian work camp, no shoes,
Ooh, yeah.
and on a train for like over a month in a train car, just hot,
Yeah.
middle of
Yeah.
summer. And then she gets there and like her job is something like clearing brush or something. So she's like
Barefoot, clearing
barefoot,
brush. Yeah.
clearing brush in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And she's for years, she was stuck there.
I just thought of a new dad hack.
What is that?
I mean, this is not a new dad hack.
Always
but
keep
this
an
is
extra
just,
pair of shoes.
well, there's one. Yeah. I had a buddy, Jody, T-Bone,
Yeah.
played for PZ. He was dead set against flip-flops because it was, what if you ever need to run or get in a fight?
Yeah.
But I just was thinking like, that's a classic, when your daughter's complaining about not having the new iPhone, it's kind of, well, at least you're not in a gulag barefoot clearing brush. Yeah, you think you've got problems. So,
Well, did you
just
have a
keep
dad
that one.
hack for this episode?
Yeah, I had one or two. One was just this evening I was talking with some other buddies about how important it is to know, just kind of keep an inventory of where the bathroom is. And I think that's good for grown-ups in general, like in case you got to do a emergency number 2, but also as a dad of a young kid.
I know some of your history. I think you're coming at this a little bit, different perspective.
Yeah, I
than
didn't share
am.
that bit of information with.
We don't need to go
these
public
guys.
with that.
That's going to be like.
But I understand
that's
why.
Gonna be like what is that? A premium subscription. We'll offer that story. My wife doesn't even know that story.
She listens to this podcast. Now she's
Yeah.
going to ask you about it.
She doesn't want to know.
Yeah. I'm not going to say.
So the other reason is because when you got young kids and you're at a store, inevitably they need to go to the bathroom at the least opportune time. So, or if you're in the car, they need to go to the bathroom out of nowhere. And we all kind of settled on Lowe's is kind of like your best bet if there's an emergency and you're out and about.
Meaning they're most
they have
locations most likely to have a bathroom.
They're right off the highway. They have just a line of stalls, and very few of them are occupied.
Even better than McDonald's, though?
Yeah, because McDonald's, it's a roll of the dice in terms of, that's what I'm thinking of is everybody thinks McDonald's. So you're driving on a family trip and you're
if there was a
6-year-old
mass breakout of some sort of
dysentery
or whatever, like everyone's going to go to McDonald's and you want to go.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that. So if I'm on the highway and my 6-year-old says I need to go to the bathroom and I look, for the mile marker, there hopefully there's one of those, like lately you notice there's gas stations, there's a couple of Chick-fil-A signs or whatever, but oftentimes you'll see a Lowe's.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go to Lowe's. There are many, many stalls. And because it's a home improvement store, all the stalls, the little latches are always in good order. They work. Soap's stocked up. And it's just not the first place people think of for a bathroom stop. And so while the other parents may be having a bathroom emergency.
And also, if for some strange freak reason, the bathroom was completely like line out the door, You have a
You could buy
bathroom
it.
section. You could just go over to a toilet in the bathroom section and be like, I just got to go.
Or their
you know?
buckets are only like
They got
$3.
buckets. They have so many places you could shit.
This is
So even if the bathrooms don't work,
oh man,
you could just go out to the lawn and garden section
Yeah.
and just shit anywhere you want.
they would welcome it in the lawn and garden section.
Go do it in the flowers and be like, thank you. These are going to look great tomorrow.
Your perennials, second to none.
Okay.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good dad hack.
Yeah.
Okay, my dad hack was in regards to Halloween's coming up.
Uh-huh.
And I did this one year. If you have kids who are like probably age 3 to 6, maybe 7, this is a great dad hack. So what you do is and some of it's seasonal, like you just kind of maybe pay attention to the calendar and the I don't know what they call the astrological calendar or whatever, but it's full moon. When you got a full moon out, and I did this when my daughter was probably 4, and we're driving home, and it's a full moon from something, and I noticed it's a full moon. So what you do is you just really serious. You say, oh man, I said it's a full moon. It's like, oh gosh, hey guys, when we get home, if I start acting strange, if you look at my hand and it starts to get kind of hairy, I'm going to go into the closet, lock me in there, and whatever happens, don't let me out.
Mm-hmm.
And when I said it was awesome, because there's just like this silence in the car. And then I hear this little voice like, Daddy, you're not going to change, are you? Or something like that. She's like freaking out. She starts crying. So take advantage of these moments. I guess the dad hack is like, look for opportunities to scare the crap out of your kids when they're young, because you only get it for a little time. Like, she believed me. She believed that I was going to turn into a werewolf, and she was terrified for a split second. Yeah. Another time was we went to we had some friends. We were doing like a fall, it was in Broken Bow, like a cookout or whatever, and went out in the woods making like making pizzas on the firewood thing or whatever. And I bought a werewolf mask on the way out there. Yeah. So I give it to my buddy and I'm like, hey, go around back and like hide. And so then we start telling stories about the white werewolf of Broken Bow. And same thing, take advantage of those years, because like we start telling the story and then my buddy starts walking out of the woods. Ooh. And there's only about 10 seconds where they're screaming and they're freaking out. Yeah. Then one smart kid goes, that's Mr. Clark. I know, I saw him go in the house, But it's magic for all those other kids. A terrifying magic, but a magic,
For those of you that think that this is mean, I was just thinking, well, you do this, and then say 15 years later, your child is a refugee in a foreign country, and somebody comes up and asks them to invest a bunch of money into some scheme, and your kid is streetwise by this point because you played some pranks on him, and they go, no.
I think you want to have a healthy... Okay, think about it this way. Do you want a dad, and I don't know if this applies to your dad or my dad or any dads, but do you want a dad who's never pulling any practical jokes on you?
No, you need
you want
a little
as a
bit
dad,
of mischief from the dad.
There's a certain amount of like, you should look for opportunities to scare the shit out of your kids, right?
I think, it's
a good dad.
So. Yeah.
I mean, you obviously, know when to say that's
sure.
Hey, it's just a joke. Not really going to eat you tonight.
He didn't run out of the forest and then push them into the fire, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a great dad hack. I'm going to go home and scare my kids tonight.
Scare them to death. It's not that hard to do when they're like under 5. It's It's when they get like 7, 8, they start to get a little bit, they might know what's going on. Something's funny.
My son wouldn't go for something like that, but my daughter might. And
if you try it, let me know how it goes.
I don't know if I've got the...
You can't tell your wife about it though.
Oh, for sure.
You just do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't. I mean, she would have been down with it anyway, but I didn't want to risk it.
I
didn't want to risk her like blabbing out too soon. Like, he's just joking.
Yeah.
It's like, no,
Mom's going to
I might kill you tonight. Don't open that door.
If they don't believe it, it's not effective.
So, again, welcome to the Conspiracy Dad podcast. But if you haven't guessed, we're doing a Halloween episode.
Yeah.
I'm going to insert a bunch of Halloween noises right there. I don't know what I'll have.
That's
but
fun.
Do you have a favorite Halloween movie?
Hmm.
I'll share mine while you
Great.
wait.
Yeah, yeah.
Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
Oh,
You ever
wow.
seen that
That's
one?
pretty specific.
Yeah, it's the best of all of the Abbott and Costellos,
Mhm.
in my opinion. And it's amazing. It's got Wolfman, it's got Dracula, it's got Frankenstein, all
Mhm.
the old school actors, and we grew up watching it. That's probably why I like it, but my kids like it too. We
Yeah.
watch it.
No, I don't have that. I mean, Scream comes to mind because it's kind of the first of its kind. That's, I mean, a pretty general answer. The thing about me with Halloween is like my mom was into a weird like Billy Graham or you phase during my formative years, and so we weren't allowed to celebrate Halloween.
Like not even
Yeah, yeah,
trick or
we
treat.
we had to hide in the back bedroom, and like you would hear the doorbell ringing while the other kids were out trick or treating, and you were just sitting in this room. And my mom tried to pull this. Here's why moms are lame. She tried to convince us. This is just like, I mean, look, we're having popcorn, we're watching a movie, we're having fun.
It's not like that
No,
because everyone else in the
yeah.
neighborhood is doing something
And they
else.
just keep ringing the doorbell, reminding me that I'm not out there doing the fun thing that they're doing. And you know what my mom does now?
She loves it. She gives
She
away all the
makes
candy.
costumes for my kids.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And
the
yeah,
best.
she hands them candy. Yeah.
You
She's,
you Protestants, man.
we're
Was that
swayed.
really straight from Billy Graham? Did he go
Here
like on
is,
an anti-Halloween
I
kick
don't
or
know if it
something?
was only Billy Graham. We were going, it's getting really
Getting
gritty now.
real.
We were going to Victory Christian Center. So I'm
Yeah,
calling them
yeah,
out
yeah.
in the, it
Early
would have been like
'90s.
like
Yeah.
early 90s, mid 80s.
I
And
say it like I know. I don't know.
I don't know if they're to blame exactly, but I don't know where else my mom would have got the idea that we're not allowed to do Halloween. And, you know, my wife, when she's listening to this, is going to roll her eyes because I go on this soapbox every time. But it makes me crazy that churches do trunk or treat as an alternative to Halloween because you're just celebrating Halloween.
We don't do it as an
Now
alternative. It's just
it's,
it's an addition. I
well,
guess in
it's
addition.
got, so in
Is that a
my,
Protestant thing?
well, the way I recall it,
Because we're doing it now as
so,
Catholics, but is that
well,
started
I
as
don't
like an
know that.
anti-Halloween thing?
So, you know, like you were talking about history, people remember it from their point of view, their
Uh-huh.
perspective. Um, Victory did a trunk or treat, which I thought was really,
Back in the '90s.
yeah, like that would be like saying, we don't celebrate Mardi Gras because it's a lot of debauchery. But here at church this week, we are going to wear a bunch of masks and serve a bunch of booze, and we are going to play a lot of jazz music, and we're going to call it Christ Gras. That's my problem with that. Now, these days, most trunk or treats are kind of, a lot of those are kind of like a safe environment alternative. Hey, maybe you don't want to go trick or treat.
That's funny because we've been doing it for years
Mhm.
at our church. I never even thought about
If
it,
a
but now I'm
church,
wondering if we're like adopting the commands of our oppressors by pretending to celebrate trunk or treat
if
instead
a
of Halloween.
church says, hey, we're celebrating Halloween, we're doing trunk or treat, I'm totally good with that. If a church says, we don't celebrate Halloween because God doesn't like it,
Yeah.
but we do have this other party where we hand out candy to kids in costumes on
I think
or
we
around
probably
October
did it just
31st.
to try to like steal away,
Yeah,
like get on the bandwagon of the trunk or treat.
if it's an
We
outreach thing,
definitely
that's
celebrate
fine.
Halloween.
Mhm.
There's no anti-Halloween, but it kind of bugs me now that it's like, were we trying to be like them? Like we have
Well,
Halloween,
you know, it's funny when you
All
brought it
Hallows.
up.
Why don't we do it on All Hallows Eve? Why do
Yeah.
we do it on the week before?
When you brought it up, like, is this a big Billy Graham thing? I'm thinking, like, yeah, well, I don't think this ever would have happened in the Catholic Church because you guys have doctrinally, like, it's got to get vetted anytime
Yeah.
there's a change made. So, like,
The fact that you worked a trunk into it was like, you just were friends with the car show guys.
yeah,
And you're
sure.
like, hey, car show guys, do you want to come decorate your
Uh-huh.
cars and hand out? It's an odd thing to think trunk or treat. And now that I think about it, that's a weird,
That is weird.
it's really weird. Like,
They could have come up with any
and
other
now
kind
it's like anybody, a Honda Civic can pull up and
oh,
decorate their
sure.
Civic and hand
Yeah,
out
yeah.
candy. Why even do that? That doesn't make any sense. And ours is huge. Like we have over 1,000
Yeah,
kids show
yours
up at
is
ours.
fun.
It's a lot of
Yeah.
kids. But why? Why would you even do that? It's a weird thing.
It sort of sounds like trick, the word trunk, but yeah, it could have been anything. Yeah.
I don't know. it sounds like something that people started doing without asking any questions, and they just they
This
just
is
did
how
it.
it happens.
This is how this is how people do things. So,
Well, I digress from. I didn't have a great Halloween movie, but partly because I
did
wasn't
you ever
around.
watch Ernest Scared Stupid? That was another favorite growing up.
No, I mean I know the Ernest movies, but I didn't see that one specifically.
I don't think it's his best. Ernest
No,
Saves Christmas is his
that's
best,
a classic. Yeah.
but Ernest Scared Stupid is definitely the second best. I mean, I think it has a famous kid actor in it. I can't remember. It's somebody when you watch it you'll realize and be like, yeah, yeah, they went on to be like famous for something. Anyway, so this episode we thought it'd be fun to talk about ghosts because Halloween,
Mm-hmm.
ghosts, and we've talked before a bit about my anecdotal study of when I meet people,
Mm-hmm.
I like to ask them if they've ever seen a UFO and also if they've ever seen a ghost. And I have found that, like, well, I did it at the gig the other weekend. I asked the crowd, I think more people said they'd seen a ghost than
Yeah.
believe in UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's been studies done on this where surveys done where they ask, and it's something like roughly 50% of the world says they believe in ghosts,
Yeah.
which is, it's a lot of people that say they believe in ghosts. So whether or not you believe in ghosts, that's not really the point. The point is a lot of people believe in ghosts. And I have, I have never seen a ghost. I don't know if have you ever seen a ghost?
Nope.
Anything that you thought might be a ghost?
No.
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 I haven't either, and actually, I'm fine with. I don't care to.
Yeah. Yeah. That doesn't bother me too much. I mean, one of the ghost stories I heard today was, this woman's reporting this paranormal stuff. And then these paranormal investigators come into her house for like tea and biscuits or whatever. And some cup gets thrown across the room and she just decides like, well, let's go in the den instead of this in the kitchen. And I'm just going, why are you hanging out
I
in
would be
this?
gone so fast.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not real keen on seeing a ghost. That's probably why I bought a newer house instead of an older house. Because I don't want.
Is that really why?
No,
why,
not
why do you
totally
like
why,
this
but
neighborhood? Here, there's not a lot of ghosts. So that other neighborhood is
my
Indian burial
neighborhood,
ground.
yeah.
It's a little dicey. I don't know.
Yeah. I do like gentrified neighborhoods because they got character.
Yeah.
Seems like there'd probably be a lot of ghosts. Like PZ's house probably has
Oh, he's
ghosts.
got ghosts.
Ted's house probably has ghosts.
Well, through the course of my anecdotal study about ghosts, I what I'll do is I'll meet people that I don't know, usually if I'm interviewing them for a video production kind of setting, and I'll ask them that if they've ever seen a ghost. And I've heard I'm going to share a couple of the ghost stories firsthand from people that I know that I find to be credible, really successful. They're the kind of people that honestly they would never tell you their ghost story. So I thought it'd be fun to share those. And are they lying to me? Are they telling the truth? I don't know. But I don't know any reason why they would lie to me. I mean, so for example, the first one would be I'm not going to name it, but it's a doctor here in Tulsa who sells products that maybe a lot of people have used. So he's a very successful
Okay.
person, is my
Yeah.
point. And I had just met him for the first time. And we're about to do an interview. And I said that just to break the ice, like, hey, I just asked people this to break the ice. Have you ever seen a ghost? And I'm expecting no. I'm expecting like,
Yeah.
no, no. He's like, real serious all of a sudden. He's like, actually, yes, I have. Okay, tell me this story. So I'm not going to name his name, obviously, because I didn't talk to him about this, but he wouldn't be okay with it. He doesn't like to tell his story. So he was very serious when he's telling me this. He's like, okay, so my family, we owned a ranch. It was just outside of Tulsa, and uh, we had it for a couple generations. And so we would see this woman on the ranch that we called the pioneer woman, and you'd see her like out in the field, or you'd see her like at a distance.
Mm-hmm.
You would see a woman walking around that was dressed in like pioneer day clothes. And they talked like the family would joke about it or talk about it for generation, like for a long time. They knew about this, and then anytime something weird would happen, they say, "Ah, probably pioneer woman."
Yeah.
They would wake up, and he said, "This is so weird." He said there was things like she didn't like men. So like one of the things that happened was all the families were out there doing something. They go to bed, they wake up the next day, and all of the men's shoes are tied together, like the laces tied together, sitting
Okay.
by the
Yeah.
door, and the women's aren't. And so she would do like little gimmicky things like that to mess with the men all the time. So fast forward a few years ago, they sell the ranch. And when they sell the ranch, he doesn't tell the buyers anything
No,
about
I
the
would.
ghost that haunts the ranch because they don't
Yeah,
want
I
to,
would leave that out.
it's not exactly a selling point.
Yeah.
So he sells the ranch, and then a year or so goes by, and he is stops in this town near the ranch, and there's one bar, and he goes there going to buy a drink, and the owners of the new ranch are there that they sold it to, and he goes up to him and he says, "Hey, how's things going out the ranch or whatever?" And this guy launches into the exact same story, telling right away, like, kind of weird. We had this woman that people keep seeing Pioneer. He hadn't told him anything about it. And so my buddy, the doctor that, used to own it, he doesn't even tell him, he doesn't even affirm. He said he was just so weirded out about it. He was like, I got to go. And he just
Hmm.
left. So the new owners of the ranch, they don't even know that the old owners have decades of experience with the same phenomenon that he's having to deal with now.
Yeah.
And to me, and my buddy was like, dude, it's a ghost. I don't know what to tell you, but there's a ghost out at that ranch. So,
I hope it's not too early in the podcast to ask you this. Where do ghosts fit into the Catholic?
ooh, I wanted to talk about this.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're a Christian, Catholic or otherwise, um, that was an interesting thing that I started researching for this podcast. And it's interesting because the debate, I feel like I don't have a doctrinal, like theological letter from the Pope telling
Mhm.
me exactly what we think. But the truth is, if you're a Christian, there's a lot of modern Christians, probably guys like you and me, that would say, I believe in Jesus, but I don't believe in this whole ghost thing.
Mhm.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but if you're a Christian, you definitely believe in ghosts. Like that is it's a very modern phenomenon to be like, "Nah, I don't believe in ghosts." All of your ancestors believe in ghosts, all of them. Like the idea that even you go back into scripture and, Jesus is walking on water and the disciples were terrified
Yeah.
because
Thought he was a
they thought he
ghost.
was a
Yeah.
ghost. Like being a g like
Pioneer Jesus.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There are ghosts all throughout Christian history. And so I listened to a podcast with Jimmy Akin, he's a Catholic apologist that's really good. And he was I think he was talking to Matt Fradd, but they were talking about ghosts and ghost stories. And so St. Thomas Aquinas, he believed in ghosts 100%. And he said ghosts were several things. Like it's not necessarily one thing. And so some of it was he was explaining that the English language is a combination mostly of Latin and German.
Mhm.
And so in Latin, ghost would be spirit or spiritus. And in German, it'd be spirit is Geist.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
the word ghost is just really a blend of the two,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
it just means spirit.
Mhm.
And as Christians, you definitely believe in spirits,
Okay. Yeah.
and spirits of your dead ancestors, spirits of saints, and even spirits of demonic spirits. And so, a ghost could be, in the Catholic understanding, according to Aquinas, I mean, it could be a somebody in purgatory, a soul in purgatory,
Yeah. Yeah.
trying to communicate with ancestors, usually for like prayers or for prayers to one day not be in purgatory. Or it could be demonic. It could be demons trying to trying to scare you away from God, or
Mhm.
scare you into temptation. But yeah, as a Catholic, I think I don't want to speak for the Catholic Church, but I think the history of the church is pretty strong on ghosts are a thing.
The yeah, it's sort of like a lot of conversations you hear in and around aliens where they're not all grays,
Mm-hmm.
like different species of aliens. If we're going to buy into the idea that there are aliens and there's life outside of our universe, well then why wouldn't it stand to reason there are more than one type of aliens? And then yeah, you go, okay, well if there are
Yeah, if there's
spiritual
a whole,
beings,
if there is a whole spiritual plane of existence,
mhm,
it's not going to all be the same thing.
yeah,
You're going
yeah.
to have good and bad,
Well, you
and
talk about demons. There was in my research, I heard about uh, the Japanese have an urban legend about a ghost that,
mm,
or a type of ghost that tries to convince you to commit suicide. Um, and
sounds like a demon.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's what came to mind when you brought that up. Like to convince you to do certain things that a demon might want you to do. Their ideology behind that is that there's some type of incentive for that ghost to get you to commit suicide. It's like they get to take your spot if you give it
Hmm.
up, that sort of a thing.
Is this like a Buddhist thing?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know the origins of
Hmm.
it, other than it's a Japanese urban legend.
Well, I do know because I've had that conversation with priests and other Catholic friends, and there's some that are there's a lot of modern that like they kind of go like, I don't think that we actually believe in ghosts, and I'm always the one going like, Holy Ghost? We pray to the Holy Ghost. Like, I feel like we believe in ghosts. It's
Yeah,
just you just don't want to admit it.
you believe like it's 30% of what you believe in.
I mean, yeah,
It's
it's
one of the legs of
one
the
of the
Holy Trinity.
legs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do Protestants believe in ghosts?
Well, we call it the Holy Spirit a
You
lot of
don't say
times, but
Holy Ghost?
Holy Ghost, yeah, I mean that gets
You do.
used.
You
You get,
just don't know
yeah.
what you're talking about. No, I'm just kidding.
I like you. I don't want to speak for all the Protestants. I just
No, I'm
spent.
just saying, like growing up, do your people
this
do they believe in ghosts? Your
is a good.
your mom might have an opinion on this. I mean, maybe
Oh,
that's why she didn't
geez,
want to do the
yeah,
Halloween thing. Like maybe she takes it very seriously, and
maybe,
yeah,
yeah.
ghosts are definitely a thing.
There wasn't a lot of talk about ghosts other
Not
than
a lot of
the Holy Spirit.
sermons on ghosts.
Yeah, I don't know what. Yeah, what are you supposed to
You know
do
what's
with that?
funny is that I'm friends with the pastor at Stillwater,
I thought you were
and
going to say a victory, and I
Victory.
was like, you're going to tell
I
him
don't
about what I
want to.
said.
No, and I asked him one time. I go out there periodically. I go out there and I said, "Father, hey, it's good to see you." I was like, "Hey, got any good ghost stories for me?" Because that's what I talk about.
Sure. Yeah.
And he's no. I did ask him like, "Do you have you people out here? You get many exorcisms? You get people calling you to come, sprinkle holy water on their
Yeah.
house?" And he's like, it's funny. He's like, actually, the funny thing is we do every month or so, but they're not Catholics. And he's like, what we get is a lot of times a Protestant pastor will call us and tell us they have somebody telling them about a poltergeist in their house and they don't know what to do about it. So they're asking us if we'll go take a look
Yeah.
at it.
Yeah.
And I was like, so what do you do? And he's like, well, I go out there, I sprinkle some holy water and I tell them they're okay. That's a true
There's
story. You really,
I bring up the Necronomicon
yeah.
podcast quite a bit. And one of the ones I was listening to today, just doing some digging around for ghost stories. Um, one of the guys on the podcast, one of the hosts, his name's Dave, and he is almost like jumps at the chance to be dismissive about anything religious, about anything spiritual. He's always the one that like loves to like
Mhm.
crack jokes about it. And even in that episode, he's kind of, oh yeah, that's because the Bible said that. Ugh. And but then one of the ghost stories was talking about these beings that are walking around the planet that don't know they're dead. So kind of like a purgatory
Mm.
type of idea. And like you could hear it, like you know that there's no atheists in foxholes expression. He goes, "You mean they don't know that they're dead? That sounds terrifying. I don't even want to. You mean they just walk around and they don't even. I mean, I'd want to know." It's like, oh boy, he was really confident like 5 minutes ago until all of a sudden it was a
Till you
possibility that
see a ghost.
yeah, exactly.
One of the other guys I know, I'm not going to name names, but engineer type dude, like very, very matter of fact kind of guy. Actually, I was shocked that he brought this up, but he has one of the best ghost stories. So his wife's mother died suddenly, and it was tragic, and they were sad. Everything was, it was a very difficult thing. Like at the hospital died, and so the day that she died, they go back to that night. They're back at her parents' house with her dad and her and him, and they're sitting around the kitchen table, and they just really in shock about what had just happened. And my buddy, he's like, you to me, like you're the father-in-law. There's a door to another room in the house behind him.
So I'm the widower.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the lights out in the
Mhm.
rest of the house. So it's like the kitchen is lit and then there's like a room leading to somewhere. They're talking and they're talking. And he's like, he looks up and he sees in the doorway behind his father-in-law a glowing face of a woman. And he's shocked and he's almost like, what? And as he sees it, they make eye contact and this face just like this whoosh, and like whips away.
Like in a Spielberg movie.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So it was like, it looked like something out of like Ghostbusters or something. He said
Yeah.
it wasn't a body. It was just a head. It was just this face. And then all of a sudden just whipped away when it realized he saw it. And so my buddy's like, he didn't know what to do. I'm like, what the hell did you do? Oh my God. And he's like, I just was like, we got to go. We got to go now. He didn't tell anybody what was going on. He was like, he got his wife and he's like, we just got to go. And they left. And, she's like, what's going on? This is weird. Like all of a sudden you're like, you have to leave. We have to leave. And they get in the car and she's like bugging him. So finally he's like, he freaking tells her. So he's like, and then, she ends up telling the dad. So he's like, don't tell him. No, no. And she tells him. And then he's like convinced like something's significant going on. Obviously there was something. And so I think for like the next like week, like every night they went back and tried to recreate that
Sure.
moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's sitting there going like, oh, there's nobody here. Nobody came.
Sorry.
But, yeah, he's adamant. And again, he's another one that he doesn't like to tell that story. Like he's embarrassed to tell it. He told it because he's a good friend, but, I believe him. I think that he saw something. He's just not the kind of guy that tells ghost stories ever.
Sure. Yeah.
He's just like, dude, I saw something that I cannot explain. And it's such a specific thing to say, like, I
Yeah.
saw a glowing woman's face,
Mhm.
like in the shadows all of a sudden, and then it just whipped away. It's very strange.
That's just classic wife move. You confide and you say, please
Oh,
don't
he was so unhappy.
please don't tell the one
Don't
person
tell
that this
anyone.
would affect the most.
Yes.
And then she goes,
We
I
have
know what
to
I'm
go
gonna
back
do.
and I have to tell him. That's funny. So that's two of my personal
Yeah.
ghost stories. Both I know for the audience, you're just gonna have to trust me. But yeah, for me personally, I've never seen a ghost, but I know quite a few people that say, yeah, I've seen a ghost, and they're good people, credible people. I don't know. But you researched a couple of
Yeah, I've
more
got a few.
well-known ghost stories to share.
Yeah, and I'm gonna kind of zip through these partly because
Before we do it, though, pretend that there's a campfire right here.
oh yeah.
Okay, so
Okay,
you're
great.
like getting
Yeah.
in the right mood,
Yeah.
and tell me it like we're at scout camp.
Once upon a time, there was an eerie house with
I thought you were going to say in Erie, Pennsylvania.
an eerie. There was a woman, much like your engineer friend, who did not subscribe to a lot of these. This was like late 40s, early 50s, where science was beginning to be more at the forefront of culture, and spiritual things were getting to be less and less of a like cultural, norm. And she was more like heavy into science. She got this really bad,
like Nacho Libre.
Jeez.
Never believe in God, I believe in science.
I love it. It's the best.
He says, it's so funny because he sounds so Italian through the whole movie. It's like the worst Spanish accent ever done. It just sounds like Mario and Luigi.
Hey, I like the
And
science.
he's so likable that like no one calls him out. It's
Yeah,
like, dude, that's
that's
a
not how
terrible
it's not how it
Mexican
works.
accent.
This
Uh,
does feel like we're around a campfire. Uh, this woman, she gets a terrible a heartache. No, she got a stomach ache, and so she's bedridden for about a week, and she thought it had something to do with her pancreas.
where did this happen?
This was in the woman's name is Alma Fielding, and you can Google. There's a Wikipedia on it, and then looks like there's some books and maybe some films on it as well. Um, but the short version of this story is she thought she had some kind of something wrong with her pancreas, um, but then she started to believe possibly that she was like getting taken over by a ghost, because this is the one where I was hearing stories about um, like tea kettles getting thrown across the
Mm.
room, and like it was multiple days where she's in her house with her husband and they're sitting talking, and then like you'd hear a crash in the kitchen, you go out and a glass had fallen off the counter, which that's not all that strange. I mean, that could happen, especially if your wife's like mine and leaves them like right on the edge of the counter. um but then like you'd go back in the living room to get settled, and then another one would crash, and it was like they were starting to bang up against the wall with great force. um and this was happening enough to where she had the newspaper come out. They start looking into it, and that's the account of where the newspaper guys show up. And this newspaper had like a couple guys that were on their staff that were the ghost and paranormal type
Yeah, yeah.
researcher type guys. And yeah, sure enough, they go in. There's a big crash. you know One of the teacups gets thrown against the wall. And yeah, instead of doing their meeting in the kitchen, they decide they're just going to go ahead and sit down in the living room instead. Whereas
Huh.
I would have been out of there. um and then one of the more well-known paranormal investigators of the time, like in England, came in and did the research. Um, and if I understand the story correctly, I'm pretty sure he figured out that her husband was just throwing stuff around the house. So that was a little bit of a bust. I don't know what drove her to do that though, because she was not into ghosts up until this stomach ache incident. And then she kind of
Mm.
just decided his take was that she had some kind of a psychosis that was bringing on this paranormal
I mean,
sort
I
of.
guess that would be most like if you Google or YouTube, because I know because I did like ghost stories or like there's a ton of
Mhm.
science explains that ghosts aren't real.
Yeah.
Scientist proves that Brian Cox explained to you why ghosts aren't real. It's like, oh, good grief. Yawn. Thank you. Yes. Half of the world believes in ghosts, and let Brian Cox tell me why they're not real. I mean,
That's why you got to watch what I watched this afternoon at the dentist office. I was watching the History Channel, and William Shatner was the one hosting the show.
that dude believes in ghosts. Tell
Yeah.
me he does.
Yeah. So that's the thing, is like, don't watch Brian Cox
Yeah.
explain that they aren't real. Watch William Shatner,
Ex-
and he will take you
explain that they
further
are
down
real.
the rabbit hole. William Shatner today was talking about one section of the show was talking about twins having a connection. Like
I thought you
there
were going to
was
say
a
conjoined. It's like
well
they're connected. That's right.
the idea
You ain't going
at
nowhere,
the
buddy.
butt, yeah. They're sisters. They're two of a kind.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Um,
no, but twins, even mothers,
mhm.
like, there's lots of stories of mothers knowing their kids are dead before they actually know it,
Yeah, yeah.
you
This
know?
was a story of twins where like one of them was, not even in the same house as the other, and she just got this bad feeling about her sister, and then she zips over to her sister's apartment and finds her sister has had some kind of a cardiac arrest in her
Wow.
bedroom, and so she takes her sister to the emergency room, saves her life. Um, but then the fun story that was in that account was, William Shatner's,
What was his
as,
story?
as if that weren't weird enough. Was the idea was, can you transplant a soul? Is it cased in your body? Is it in a
Mm,
vessel? Because there are people with
schizophrenic,
stories of
multiple personalities or whatever.
well, no, not that, but I mean, yeah, that's something weird too.
Like,
But
is a multiple personality somebody with just two souls trapped in one body?
I don't know. I haven't thought about that. This section or this article, what do you call it? A segment? This segment was on people getting organ transplants, and like suddenly they have a newfound interest in woodworking. And
Ah, that's cool.
and this girl claims to have these like weird kind of flashback style memories of stuff that
I've
she
heard of
knows
that.
she's never experienced.
Yeah, I've heard of that with something to do with like a World War II pilot,
Yeah, yeah. So
like
I
having all
saw
these
another thing like
memories
that.
of
Yeah.
World War II, like a kid having
Hmm.
them and being like,
Yeah, this
how does he know
girl,
all
she
that?
did some research to find out where her new liver came from, and it came from a guy who happened to be a big into carpentry, and
I think they've done studies on mice and rats with like genetic memory.
hmm,
And it's, I can't remember the exact details, but it's like they do things to manipulate one generation of rats physically,
mm-hmm,
and they carry over to the next generation. Like the next, like little things, but they'll like manipulate their environment in a
mm-hmm.
way, and it's like the next generation will start acting a certain way
Yeah,
just
almost
based
like
on
they remember.
like they remember something from another
That
generation.
was a comment I heard on a different interview in the last couple of days that had nothing to do about ghosts, but this kind of like, well, if we're made up of all these atoms and cells, and we all have memories as a culture, cultures, like as a society, we tend to have a kind of collective memory. We all think
Hmm.
Polish people are dumb. And so what if your cells do the same thing? They all work together in your body doing their jobs, and they all collectively store memories from your brain.
Maybe.
I mean, if your brain is going to like on a biological level, if your brain is storing memories, physically what's happening is there's electricity firing, and neurons are doing their stuff, and blood's traveling through, and water's traveling, making all this happen. Well, the blood flows all through your body. So I mean, if you're really getting kooky, you could say, well, like your memories travel from your brain down through your fingertips into your toes. So you've got into your liver,
Hmm.
because that filters everything. That filters your memories. And then you give your liver to some 21-year-old girl, and all of a sudden she's into playing guitar and writing scripts about, you know, different
It's not,
crazy
I mean,
stuff.
it makes sense. I mean, I've always, I mean, my thought is like, I think that the body is like a receptor. You know what I mean? Like it's like your soul and your body work together, but like your body is like receiving your soul somehow.
Mm, mm-hmm,
That's that's their traditional Christian understanding would be like the soul animates the body.
mm-hmm.
And so um you animate it enough, you feel like there might be some residual memories, like
Yeah. Yeah.
some imprints in that
Mm-hmm.
liver that just, yeah, well, you pass on to the next, and there's a little crossover there where, it's picking up a little residual memory from another person or something.
I
I don't
tell
know.
you, the more I think about the liver specifically, since that's like the coffee filter of your body,
Yeah.
like, well, if anything was going to hang on to your soul, it would be your
At
liver.
least what you ate.
Yeah. Which sometimes
You are
has
what you
effect.
eat.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah. I've got one more account that I,
oh, before you do it, I had an add in because you were talking about Shatner.
mm-hmm.
I don't know if you knew this, but uh, Dan Aykroyd is big
Oh,
ghost
right.
guy.
Yeah.
And the reason that
He made a movie about,
Ghostbusters,
okay. Yeah.
well, the reason it worked is because he believes 100% in ghosts.
So he
So when
actually
he,
had
and his
a
family
breadth
has,
of knowledge to
yeah,
use.
his
Yeah.
family, they're Catholic, but they're also like mystic Catholics. Like kind of a weird Rosicrucian kind of, I don't even know like what they were
Not
called,
quite
but
Protestant, but
well,
still
so
Catholic.
Catholics that I know, like I know a buddy who his aunt, okay, this is weird. Actually, they're neighbors with Dan Aykroyd in Canada. It's like growing up.
That is
And
so
she
cool.
was like, they were into like seances and like she's a clairvoyant or whatever you would call it. Like she's like a
Yeah.
medium or whatever.
That was more common 50, 60 years
Yeah.
ago.
And
Yeah.
so, but she would be called, like the police would call her for investigations. They'd be looking for like a missing person, and she would like, no, 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 and like they're over here, and they'd find them.
That's a good way to get arrested for suspicion of
Yeah.
murder.
So anyway, fast forward, I was at a dinner with it's my friend's aunt and with our pastor, and he's explaining this, that like she is well known for being kind of a medium or whatever. And my pastor's like, you need to stay 100% away from that. Like that is really not good. And so it's funny that like, yeah. And then the fact that, yeah, they were actually neighbors with the Aykroyds. And then if you go back, the Aykroyds they would do that kind of stuff. They were into like weird, which it's also weird if you think about like now it's weird, but if you go back to the 90s, like freaking Nancy Reagan was having seances in the White House.
I
Hillary
didn't know that.
Clinton was having seances in the White House. Like there was a point in like the 90s where calling up spirits from the dead was a pretty normal,
I didn't know
weirdly.
that.
You can look up a speech with Hillary Clinton talking about communing with the dead spirit of Eleanor Roosevelt. Seriously. Like and Bill Clinton talking about it and talking about like, oh, the night before Hillary was talking to Eleanor. And it's one of these things like you hear it and you think, oh, that's kind of cute. But if you stop and you think like, wait a minute, this person is a Secretary of State.
Yeah.
Do you really think that you're talking to a ghost at night? Because you're supposed to be protecting a lot of embassies right now. and, and if you're hearing ghosts, you should probably get a psych eval. Look that up.
Yeah.
Like look at Bill
Google's
Clinton
working
talking
on it.
about
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton.
I think I broke Google with that one because it's
It'll come
taken.
up.
Yeah.
It's a thing. So did you find that clip?
Book says Hillary Clinton talks to the dead.
Yeah.
June 22nd, 1996. This is the first thing that came up, which looks like it's just a clip from CNN.
Is my internet not working very well?
It strangely, it just seems to not be working well when I'm looking up Hillary Clinton stuff.
I think it's because we're talking about ghosts.
Yeah, that could be.
Anyway, I forget where I was going with that point, but
Well,
I think
you
I
were
was just pointing out that like back in the 90s, for some reason, people got a pass for saying some pretty outlandish stuff where they'd say, you know, yeah, I was talking to the ghost of Eleanor Roosevelt last night, and she told me that, you know, we should do this in Libya tomorrow. And it's like, why is no one else going, hey, seems strange.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you're the one that said this before, but when you're in the middle of a historical moment, sometimes you don't realize that's what's happening.
Yeah.
And I've been in situations where somebody said something really odd, and then an hour later, I asked somebody, like, did he just say he was talking to Eleanor Roosevelt or whatever it was? And somebody goes, yeah, that was weird.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what happened in that room. She said something like
That's
that.
what you'd think if you're Secretary of
Of
State.
course, now there I found the video of Bill Clinton. It looks like here he saying that his wife, quote, communed with the spirit of Eleanor Roosevelt, appeared and was subsequently widely circulated. So the video is real, and with the exception of the spooky mood music, the clip has not been deceptively edited. This footage shows Clinton speaking at a dedication event for New York City's Franklin D. Roosevelt Four Freedoms Park. So they're at some kind of a commencement speech for a Roosevelt.
Yes.
Okay. So I will put this in the show notes for sure. If anybody wants to see this video.
And in the speech, he's telling the audience
Hey.
that he spoke to his wife last night.
Yeah.
And then she said that she was speaking to Eleanor that night and said to say hi and a couple other things. But
yeah, that's not
the
weird
point
at all.
is, world leaders believe. So back to that 50% of the world believes in ghosts. Well, Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, they believe in ghosts. She talks to ghosts regularly. And, you know, Dan Aykroyd believes in ghosts. That's why that movie was so funny, because Bill Murray thought it was a joke.
Right. Yeah.
And the dynamic between the two is that he was really serious and he was making a joke about all of it. But Dan Aykroyd, if you asked him today, yeah, he believes in ghosts, 100%. So
they're the best.
God, it's so strange just to think about Bill. That was not that long ago. That was during Obama's administration that she's still
2016, yeah.
communing with ghosts
Yeah.
or the spirits of dead people.
Yeah, that's pretty weird.
She ain't Catholic, I'll tell you that. We're we ain't doing that. He
No.
said Dan Aykroyd might be doing that.
I think
Some Catholics.
your priest buddy's wise to say I
Yeah,
would
no,
stay away from that.
he was like adamant. He was like, no, you don't want to have anything to do with that.
No, I don't think so. I mean, kind of like we said earlier in the conversation. I mean, if that were to happen, I don't think I would just continue to hang out in the house. I don't think I would
Yeah, I
try and
couldn't
recreate
sleep.
the situation. It's pretty weird. Yeah.
I don't want to see a ghost. I mean, I've seen UFOs,
Yeah.
but I really,
That's my take on UFOs. Like a lot of people say I want to see one and you said the same thing. And I keep going back to like I don't know that we want them here.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Well, I don't either. I'm just saying that I've seen one, and it like, do I want to see a ghost? I really don't want to see a ghost. I think I personally, okay, this may be where we button it up, but like, my personal take is I do believe in ghosts. I do believe in the spiritual realm. Exactly what a ghost is, I don't know, because I mean, there seems to be some contradictions, or it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, spirits are supposed to be non-physical, but sometimes they can be physical.
mhm.
I mean, how does that work?
Well, the last one I was going to hit, I know you're wanting to button it up, but this was, I thought, the most interesting
Oh,
one.
go ahead.
But I won't take a terribly long time on it. Do you remember in 2011 there was a tsunami that there was an earthquake which caused a tsunami which wiped out a bunch of Japan.
Yes.
Okay. And that took out like I want to say something like I can't remember. This is gonna we were saying the other day, like a couple of lives is a tragedy, 1,000 lives is a statistic. I cannot remember if it was 20,000 or 200,000 lives, but I mean, tens of thousands of
Either
people.
way,
It
it's,
was tragedy.
yeah,
Yeah.
not good.
Um, you know,
And you're pretty
giant,
insensitive about the whole situation.
yeah, giant swath of Japan wiped out. And um, there are multiple accounts, specifically from taxi cab drivers in Japan, of giving rides to ghosts. So, I mean, it's not like they go and they see somebody in a white sheet and they pull over and come on and get in my cab. But it's like one of the first stories that they give out is
This is all right after the tsunami.
it's this so that tsunami was in March of 2011. Uh, the summer of 2011, this cab driver's doing his shift, pulls over to pick up a passenger. Is this young female in a jacket, which he thought was weird because she's wearing like a heavy winter coat and her hair was wet, um, which is a weird thing in June to be doing.
Yeah.
And she asked to go to a particular part of town that had been really devastated by this tsunami. And the guy said, the driver says something like, "Okay, well, we're heading that way. Are you sure you want to go over? There's really nothing over there now that the tsunami took everything out." And then she said something like, "Oh, am I dead?" And he turns around and she's disappeared. Now, cab drivers, you could, say a lot of things about them. Um, but the weird thing is there are more than one there's more than one account of this happening, and more than once the fare actually gets taken. So that's like kind of the thing they go back to is the
There's
cab
some kind of
drivers.
documentation.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
cab driver turns the meter on, makes the drive towards that area, and then their passenger's gone. Um, and
Hmm.
uh, some of these stories, it's somebody that
Other
wants.
Japanese stories in that area.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty common. It's something like there was a book that accrued like a book of about 100 of these cab driver accounts of people giving rides to what they believe to be ghosts from. So there was a couple thousand lives of folks that were people just counted as missing. They didn't know
Hmm.
what happened to them. So that was like one of the more interesting things I came across looking up ghost stories was like guys that weren't looking to be famous for being ghost storytellers, and the kind of the consistent thing was that they actually had a little bit of documentation that at least they turned their meter on for some reason, and they went to go take a ride all the way to the area where this tsunami hit.
It's also weird that it seems like there's like ghost hotspots.
Yeah.
Like it has something to do with where you are. Like I think in Japanese culture, ghosts are like a
Yes.
big part of the culture.
Yeah.
But you go to New Orleans, like
Mm-hmm.
there's ghosts, and
Yeah.
um, so far around here, not a lot of ghosts.
Nuts. Yeah.
Although I tried to scare the shit out of my kids again with a Ghost of Trinity
Lots of
Creek
werewolves, but
story. They
okay.
didn't buy it though; they were too
Goes
old
to
by that
Trinity
point.
Creek. The entry to your neighborhood is the least scary
I
entry.
know. I had to create an elaborate Indian burial ground kind of backstory,
Oh
but they
my
still didn't go
goodness.
with it.
Yeah. That's pretty far fetched.
That's Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Everywhere could be an Indian
Well,
burial
that part's
ground.
not far fetched. What I mean is like your neighborhood, like mine, is about the least haunted looking neighborhood
Yeah.
that you could find.
Well, not right now. Halloween's right around the corner,
Well,
but
yeah, sure.
no, you're right. It's not scary at all.
Again, PZ's neighborhood, you could say there's ghosts.
And gosh, should I tell him about our friend at Canes? I don't know if Brad wants me to like. So I said, Brad, have you heard Brad's ghost stories? Maybe I'll just put it out there and say, I'll say this. Canes Ballroom in Tulsa,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of history, definitely haunted. like, I'm not going to tell Brad's stories because I don't know if he wants everyone to know. Like, I think he has some really cool ghost stories of stuff that he's just being there at 2 o'clock in
I
the
was going to say,
morning.
Brad has spent a lot of time in that building by
Yes.
himself
Yeah.
in the middle of the night.
And, but we captured a ghost on camera, Nick and I,
At
at
Canes?
Canes.
Okay.
So, it was really weird because there was an event and Nick was taking pictures and he's taking a picture of our friend and he doesn't notice till he's editing the picture that on her dress is a perfect shadow of a man in a cowboy hat. And he was thinking like, I don't remember seeing anybody in a cowboy hat there that night. So he shows it to me and I'm looking and it's like, that is weird. It looks like a profile. And where he's standing, it seems really hard to see that a shadow, like it would have to have been like behind and in front or whatever. But then I noticed that there's in Canes, you have all these pictures around the outside of
Mm-hmm.
all the old timers of Bob Wills and all the
Mm-hmm.
Texas Playboys behind everyone. And if you look at the shadow and you look at the picture of the person right behind my friend, it's a perfect profile of that guy on her dress.
Mm.
Even so much as that he has a kerchief on, like a cowboy hat, and
Yeah,
like an
yeah.
old timey.
Yeah.
The shadow looks exactly like the profile of the picture behind him.
Yeah, that's pretty weird.
It's a ghost.
It's a ghost. Surprise.
So we assumed it's a ghost because we're dumb.
It's
like,
certainly not an artifact in the photography.
no. It's just like a weird like shadow that you're like, well, it looks exactly like that dead guy that's right behind her. I don't know.
If I were one of the Texas Playboys and had played at Canes,
You'd haunt that place.
yeah, I'm thinking
sure.
if I was notable enough to have my poster up in there.
Especially when you see some of the acts in the late 90s they were letting in there. ICP, like I'm going to come and haunt that place
yeah,
for sure.
For sure.
You call that music? That's what it is. It's all these angry old cowboys who are just rolling in their grave because of all the terrible music they brought in there in
hilarious.
like that like couple of decades.
Them and Tech Nine.
Tech Nine. I'm gonna haunt you forever for that.
And all the
garbage.
Tech Nine fans that we have are really going to be upset about our take on them at ICP.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Anyway, finally to button it up, what's your opinion? Do you believe in ghosts?
Yeah, well, I'm kind of like that guy Dave on Necronomipod. All three of those guys are pretty dismissive of like religious stuff. And that was funny to listen to that episode where they were like, they had some enough credibility to some of these accounts where they were like, boy, this is really challenging some of my beliefs. And I must believe in them enough because like when you said, I don't want to see one, I was like, yeah, me neither.
There you go.
So
if you thought it was nothing, why would you even care?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I must believe in them enough to want to steer clear of them.
Well, if you ever see one, please let me know. And the world. We could through the podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a fascinating subject. I don't think we could ever like get to like what exactly a ghost is. I mean, I know I said it's a spirit, but it's one of those things. It's like, well, what does that even mean?
Right. Yeah.
I'm not gonna pretend like I know what that means.
Yeah.
It animates the body, I guess. I don't know.
Hmm. And the liver.
And the liver.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, thank you for listening to the podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please like, share, subscribe, all those wonderful things. And we'll see you guys next time.